Hello friends, welcome to Jinesh IS Academy editorial analysis. In this editorial, we do 5 things. Firstly, we will link the editorial to the UPSC CSE mains syllabus. Secondly, we will understand the key points from the editorial. Thirdly, we will understand the key concepts from the examination point of view. Fourthly, we have modeled the MCQs as per the UPSC prelims examination. And fifthly, we have modeled mains questions as per UPSC mains syllabus. So let's begin today's editorial analysis. Today's our topic of discussion is retail push. It's all about FDI in single brand retail in India. It's come under UPSC CSE syllabus under the purview of GS paper 3, which covers mostly government policies, transparency and accountability, investment models and liberalization. Friends, before moving forwards, we just discussed the key points about this topic. The government's proposed norms to relax conditions for direct investment in single brand retail. Here key point is foreign direct investment and single brand retail. Guys, a FDI is an investment in the form of a controlling ownership in a business in one country by an entity based in another country. We can understand FDI in contrast with FII. FDI is an long term investment. On the other hand, FII, it is generally short term investment. FDI invest in physical assets and FII invest in financial assets. FDI aim is to increase enterprise capacity or productivity or change management control. On the other hand, FII aim is to increase capital availability. FDI leads to technology transfer, access to markets and management inputs. On the other hand, FII results in only capital inflows. FDI flows into primary market and FII flows into the secondary market. Here we have a vital point: what is primary market and what is secondary market. Friends, how primary market is different from secondary market is an question. The primary market is where securities are created, while the secondary market is where those securities are traded by investors. In the primary market, companies sell new stocks and bonds to the public for the first time, such as with an initial public offering. So, thus we clarify what is all about the primary market and what is all about the secondary market. Then our point is entry and exit in relatively difficult. However, FII entry and exit is relatively very easy as compared to FDI. Seventh point is FDI is eligible for profits of the company and FII is eligible for capital gain. Does not tend to speculative in terms of FDI and FII tend to be very much speculative. Direct impact on employment of labor and wages, and on the other hand no direct impact on employment of labor and wages. FDI is abiding interest in management and FII is fleeting interest in management, we can understand. After that, we discuss an MCQ for CSE prelims. It was appeared in 2011 CSE. We can connect our editorial with UPSC prelims also. So, question here is both foreign direct investment FDI and FII, foreign institutional investor, which we already discussed, are related to investment in a country. Which one of the following statement best represent an important difference between the two? Here the right answer is B. This is B. Here FII helps in increasing capital availability in general, while FDI only targets specific sectors. And here our vital point is single brand retail, which is a specific sector where the FDI is coming. Now, what is the basic difference between single brand retail and the multi brand retail? We Indians are very used to with the multi brand retail kind of things. Now, we can discuss the differences between these two. Single brand retail, where a business sells goods to individual customers, not other businesses, and such goods are sold under the same brand. For example, we have a very good picture of Nike showroom. Nike sets up stores in India in which the foreign parent of Nike, that is Nike Inc., invest. Such stores can only sell Nike products under the single brand route. On the other hand, we can show a lady is totally confused because she will have so many brands to purchase, like the definition of multi-brand retail, where a business sells goods to individual customers and such goods can carry several different brands, for example, Tesco or Walmart or other departmental store type retailers which stock and sell goods from various different brands in their stores. So, at that juncture we have two things, foreign direct investment and single brand retail, which we clarify in contrast with the FII and multi brand retail. Now, what are the major policy decisions our government has taken, that is like that? Of particular importance is the centre's plan to relax the mandatory 30%, that is 30% local sourcing norm, cited as one of the major stumbling blocks for the likes of Apple to enter India's retail market. Against the present system of considering local sourcing targets on a year-on-year basis, the new rules call for calculating the 30% as a 5-year average to begin with. Quite natural, our government relaxed these norms to fetch more FDI. After the first 5 years, the local norm is meant to apply on an annual basis. Now, we can clarify all these three things with this table. We can understand that we allowed FDI in single brand retail. Earlier norm was they have to invest 30% or they can organize their resources 30% from the domestic people. But now, we can bifurcate with this new rule that they can distribute this 30% in the 5 consecutive years, which is average 6%. And after 5 years, they have again same rule, that is all about 30% on an annual basis. They can invest or they can organize local sourcing 30% from the 6th year, but the very first 5 years they can average their 30% in all these 5 years, which is near to 6%. It means on an average per year they can organize local sourcing on about 6%. Second norms is single brand retailers were mandated to source 30% locally every year if their FDI crossed 51%, even though 100% FDI is allowed in the sector. We had darkened this line. It is again very important for the CSE prelims 2020. We can understand this line with one more table. In the very first two this rows, they explain this 6% average for the first 5 years, that is the changed norms, and after 5 years they have to 30% they have organized from the local market, right. But as 100% FDI is allowed in this particular sector, but in a particular year in the first 5, if they cross 51%, then single brand retail were mandated to source 30% locally every year. If their FDI crossed 51% as per the government norms, they have sourced 30% from that year onwards. Then they cannot average their local sourcing, and from next consecutive years 30%, 30% and 30%. It means if they invested 51% out of their 100% FDI, then they have to be organize their resources locally 30%. They could not allow to do these kind of 6% kind of things. But if they could not invest at 51%, then they can average their 30% in the first 5 years, like 6%, 6%, 6% and 6%, and after 5 year completion of 5 years in India, they can do 30% local outsourcing, right. That these are the two vital points in the change FDI norm in terms of single brand retail. The new norms also say that foreign retailers' export purchase from India would also be counted toward the mandatory 30%. Companies can source goods from India for global use directly or via group entities in India or abroad, or indirectly through a third party. Here once again we have a question for CSE Prelims 2020. Consider the following statements. First statement: centers plan to relax the mandatory 30% local sourcing norm in single brand retail, and our second statement is all about the new rules call for calculating the 30% as a 5-year average to begin with, and right answer is both 1 and 2 statements are true. So, these are the question for the sake of CSE prelims. Next points are: the new norms could help bring more FDI into the sector, quite natural, we are relaxing the norms, so we will fetch more FDI. Boost local manufacturing as well as exports. India's integration with global value chain is a very big point, will improve benefiting MSMEs, medium, small, medium enterprises that have struggled for market access. Here we saw one chart, and even once we are moving in mains, we can make certain diagrams to make our answer very attractive to fetch more marks. Here we can say we have certain terms like connectivity, cooperation, hyper specializations the people have, then policies, social, environmental protection, etc. Before moving to a next slide, we can understand the pros and cons of global value chain. First of all, its positive points. It is all about brand recognition, innovation in communication, challenge stereotypes and cost effectiveness. These are the biggest positivity of global value chain. Somehow certain negativity also have with global value chain, like exploitation of negative issues, religious feelings, infringement, no consideration of cultural sensibilities nor historical context of targeted countries. Next key point is the center should stop micromanaging. Micromanaging is again a key term the retail sector through curbs on legitimate competitive practices. Here we put certain pros of this micromanagement and cons of the micromanagement. However, in that scenario, micromanagement is not up to the mark towards our policies. First of all, the peace of mind. If we will see narrowly, from a manager's perspective, micromanaging provides a kind of security, reassurance that work is getting done. It is this need for security that prompts people to micromanage in the first place. It means they can closely monitor all the day-to-day affairs of their company or in their organization. In terms of cons, at its worst, micromanaging means two people doing one job. In terms of India, it is suicidal. For a manager, their time could be spent leading rather than supervising, but it also wastes time for an employees. Rather than focusing on their job, they are forced to constantly explain and re-explain themselves and their work. It is again a waste of time. This hurts productivity, eating into company's profit margin. So, quite naturally, if we are inviting foreign ventures, they will not come in India if we are closely or micromanaging their affairs. Another points are, it should review its restriction on marketing practices in e-commerce. Marketplace entities would not be able to buy more than 25% from a single vendor or sell the goods of the companies in which the marketplace entity holds a stake, which targets so-called foreign e-tailers at a time when distinction between foreign and domestic companies have become increasingly hard to make. After all, the opening up of retail space so far has not driven kirana stores to the wall, as was predicted by skeptics, narrow-minded people. To set terms for foreign investors is all very well, but not at the expenses of throttling innovations. That is the points. Here we have certain concepts to learn which are come out of this editorial analysis. The first thing is foreign direct investment and growth, and second is DIP, and the overview of FEMA, Foreign Exchange and Management Act. Here foreign direct investment, briefly called or FDI, we already discussed, is a form of investment that involves the inoculation of foreign funds into an enterprise that operates in different country of an origin from the financier. Foreign direct investment has developed radically as a major form of international capital transfer since last many years. Between 1980 to 1990s, 1980s point to be noted, 1980s to be 1990, world flows of FDI defined as cross-border expenditures to acquire or expand corporate control of productive assets have approximately tripled. Advantages of FDI do not increase automatically. Even across countries, sectors, local communities, national strategies and the international investment architecture matter for attracting FDI to huge number of developing countries for reaping the benefits, the full benefits of FDI for the development. Here we have again a diagram, category 1, category 2, category 3. Before moving on this diagram, we can understand the scenario of 1991, the scenario of 1991 in which India played a very vital role for the world, and it was the very tough time for India, thanks to our former PM Shri Manmohan Singh ji for their outstanding and magnificent policies. In the 1991 Indian economic crisis had its roots in 1985, when India began having balance of payments problem, which is known as balance of payment crisis. As imports swelled, leaving the country in a twin deficit, the Indian trade balances was in deficit at a time when the government was running on a large fiscal deficit. Now, the question is, what caused the 1991 currency crisis in India? The crisis was caused by currency overvaluation. The current account deficit and investor confidence played significant role in the sharp exchange rate depreciation precipitated by the Gulf War. India's oil import bill swallowed, exports slumped, credit dried up and investors took their money out. Friends, here we had used so many technical terms like current account deficit, fiscal deficit, Gulf War, exchange rate depreciation, all these etc., etc. Quite natural, in that particular slide we can attach and discuss only issues which is related to FDI and single brand retail, but in our upcoming editorial analysis we can discuss all these concepts with you. Here you can see category 1 allowed 100% FDI permitted through automatic route, up to 100% FDI permitted through government route, 100% FDI permitted through government plus automatic route. It means in India there are only 3 routes to enter with FDI, category 1, category 2 and category 3. Here we can understand this automatic route and government route. Here you can see a lethargic picture of government route and a very attractive picture of automatic route. Foreign direct investment in India are regulated under the FEMA or Foreign Exchange Management Act 2000, which is governed by Reserve Bank of India. It means FDI is controlled and organized by the Reserve Bank of India. Here we can discuss and this automatic route in contrast with the government route. Automatic route, by this route FDI is allowed without prior approval by government or Reserve Bank of India. It means the foreign partners are allowed, they are most welcomed without any documentation. And on the other hand, the government route, Prior approval by government is needed. Why this route? It is mostly lethargic, but the new dynamic leadership of Shri Narendra Modi make their best efforts to reduces the hiccups which we saw in this picture, like weak judiciary, weak rules of law, law and order situation, state control, political interferences. These are certain issues which the foreign partners do not like about our country. So, our legislatures make best efforts to improve it. In government route, the application needs to be made through foreign investment facilitation portal, which will facilitate single window clearances of FDI application under approval route. The application will be forwarded to the respective ministers, which will act on the application as per the standard operating procedures. Foreign Investment Promotion Board FIPB, which was the responsible agency to oversee this route, was abolished on May 24, 2017. It means our present leadership is much more visible and have a leader like quality, and they are reducing the hiccups by abolishing this FIPB board in May 24, 2017. This historical point is very important for the sake of our FDI policies. Now, know about the approval process for FDI. It held its last meeting on 17th April, which was the 245th meeting of the board on 24 May 2017. Foreign Investment Promotion Board, which we discussed, that was abolished. Its last meeting was 245th meeting. Henceforth, the work relating to processing of application of FDI and approval of government thereon under the extant FDI policy and FEMA shall now be handled by the concerned minister's department in consultation with the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, that stands for DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce, which will also issue the standard operating procedures for processing of application and decisions of the government under the extant FDI policy. Now, the crux point is Foreign Investment Promotion Board was abolished, and on that place a new department under the Ministry of Commerce was established, and now they decide the standard operating procedures for FDI, where total foreign equity inflows is more than rupees 5,000 crore. Guys, please pay attention, it is very important for the sake of CSE prelims and any other UPSC examinations, banking examination, and a kind of exam where economic weightage was more. The competent authority is required to place the same to Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Now, we have again an organization or a kind of department for consideration within timelines. So, in that nutshell, we discussed three things. First thing is Foreign Investment Promotion Board FIPB was abolished in May 24, 2017, and after that a new organization name is DPIIT, stand for Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce, which make the standard operating procedures. And third thing, if the inflows exceeding the rupees 5,000 crore, then an approval of Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is much needed thing in terms of India. Here in that slide we have a FEMA, a Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. The Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999 is an act of Parliament of India to consolidate and amend the law relating to foreign exchange with objective of facilitating external trade and payments for promoting the orderly development and maintenance of foreign exchange market in India. It was passed in the winter session of Parliament in 1999, replacing the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. See the difference, earlier before 1919 we have a FERA, and after 1999 we have a FEMA. The key change is earlier we can regulate and now we can manage the things. This act makes offences related to foreign exchange civil offences. It extends to the whole of India, replacing FERA, which had become incompatible with the pro-liberalization policies of Government of India. It enabled a new foreign exchange management regime consistent with the emerging framework of the World Trade Organization. So, we are making our laws as per the global laws. It is very welcome step, guys. It also paved the way for the introduction of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. It is very important initiative by the present government, which came into effect from 1st July 2005. 1st July 2005. I am just talking about the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. This point is not much. I will make a different slide for that and discuss this Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002 in detail. Now, we can discuss the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Previously, we discussed that if FDI flow will exceed the rupees 5,000 crore, then the approval of this Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is needed, and the very first thing, it is chaired by Prime Minister. That is very important. Kindly note this point for the sake of CSE prelims, any other UPSC exam like Combined Defence Services, Assistant Commandant, National Defence Examination, etc., etc. The CCE lays down the priorities for public sector investment and consider specific proposal for investment of not less than specific levels, rupees 3 billion at present, as revised from time to time. It has a mandate to review economic trends on a continuous basis, as also the problems and prospects, with a view to evolving a consistent and integrated economic policy framework for the country. It also directs and coordinates all policies and activities in the economic field, including foreign investment that require policy decisions at a highest level, and you can saw that Prime Minister Modi is here and with his all cabinet members, it means there is no chance of corruption, that procedure is very transparent. Guys, FDI has also three categories: greenfield FDI, brownfield FDI, and acquisition and mergers. Greenfield FDI is 10 when it is made in new projects. And brownfield FDI is when it is made in vendor developed or underutilized projects. Point to be noted: the accounting record of FDI inward, FDI outward, etc. are reflected in the capital account of a country's balance of payment. Earlier, we have discussed the balance of payment crisis in the year 1991, which was the replica of 1985. Now, we have a chart for an investment in our country. Today's topic is related to foreign direct investment, but we have utilized all other avenues like foreign portfolio investment, foreign venture capital investment, other investment, and investment on non-repatriable basis. Here FDI we already discussed, but the LLP is a new word. LLP stands for Limited Liability Partnership. A limited liability partnership is a form of business, incorporations, and a legal entity that can do the specified businesses. The LLP format is suitable for startups and small and medium enterprises, especially those do services sector activities. As we know, our IITians and the guys from new colleges making very new startups. How does an LLP work? That is the question. Limited liability partnership LLP allows for a partnership structure where each partner liabilities is limited to the amount they put into the business. It means it is much handy and convenient. Having businesses partners means spreading the risk, leveraging individual skills and expertise, and establishing a division of labor, and the prerequisite for that is they all have to cooperate to win. Here again we have two routes, the automatic route and the approval route, and we have a PROI. This PROI stand for person resident outside India, means a person who is not a person resident in India. Second point is foreign portfolio investment. Guys, in the Indian context, FII along with sub accounts with FIIs and QFIIs. Here you see the QFIIs are new terms. I will explain all these new terms in detail. Can be collectively classified as foreign portfolio investments. It means FII plus QFIIs. is equal to foreign portfolio investment. Now, what is QFIIs? As we know, foreign individuals cannot invest directly in India's markets without sub-accounts within FIIs. Sub-accounts are entities that include foreign companies, foreign individuals and institutions, funds or portfolios established or incorporated outside India on whose behalf FIIs proposes to make investment in India. As an alternative, QFII was introduced in the year 2002. Point to be noted for the sake of prelims, guys. FPI is equal to FII plus QFIIs, and I am discussing the QFII, and here we already discussed the sub accounts. As an alternative, QFII was introduced in the year 2002. A qualified foreign investor can invest in India without sub account. However, they have to open a demat account and a trade account with a depository participant in India. Here two very important points regarding to QFI are: the qualified foreign investors QFI can be individual, group or an association. The QFI should be resident in a foreign country that is compliant with the standards of Financial Action Task Force. Very important point I put it here, Financial Action Task Force in correlation with QFIIs. In addition, the QFII must be signatory to International Organization of Security Commissions Multilateral Memorandum of Understanding, that stands for MMOU. Here Financial Action Task Force, Pakistan is notoriously very famous for Financial Action Task Force lists, and we said that QFIs are abide by the Financial Action Task Force. The Financial Action Task Force is an intergovernmental body established in 1989 during the G7 summit in Paris. It is very important point. The objective of the FATF are to set standards and promote effective implementation of legal, regulatory and operational measures for combating money laundering, terrorist financing and other related threats to the integrity of the international financial system. Its secretariat is located at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development OECD headquarters in Paris. Its member countries as of 2019, it consists of 37 member jurisdictions. India is one of the members. I again repeat, it consists of 37 members. FATF has two lists, grey list and black lists. So, here we completed our foreign portfolio investment and we very deeply discussed the QFII, and we already discussed in QFII the FATF and the sub accounts, and both the FII plus QFI is equal to foreign portfolio investments. Now, next moot point is foreign venture capital investments, right. Here, how does a venture capital fund work? A venture capital fund is an investment fund made up of contributions from wealthy individuals or companies who give their money to a venture capital firm to manage their investment portfolio for them and to invest in high risk startups in exchange for equity. Indian venture capital undertaking means an Indian company whose shares are not listed in a recognized stock exchange in India, and second point is which is engaged in the businesses of providing services, production or manufacture of articles or things, but does not include such activities or sectors which are specified in the negative list by the SEBI with approval of central government by notifications in the official gazette in this behalf. Next point is government securities. Government securities are debt instruments that a sovereign government they sell these products to finance day to day governmental operation and provide funding for special infrastructure and military projects. These investments work in much the same way as a corporate debt issues. In India, the central government issues both treasury bills and bonds or dated securities, while the state governments issue only bonds or dated securities, which are called the state development loans SDLs. Government securities carry practically no risk of default and hence are called risk free gilt edge instrument. It is very important, friends, please be remember. And next point is investment on non repatriable basis. It means an investment the sale maturity proceeds of which are net of taxes eligible to be repatriated out of India. The expression investment on non repatriation basis may be constructed accordingly. Repatriable refer to the ability to move liquid financial assets from a foreign country to an investor's country of origin. Here the point is PIO. What is the mean of this PIO? PIO is a person of Indian origin, which means a citizen of any country other than Bangladesh or Pakistan if point number 1 he is at any time held Indian passport, point number 2 he or either of his parents, any of his grandparents was a citizen of India by virtue of the Constitution of India or the Citizenship Act 1955. Next slide organize a question which come in 2014 CSE prelims. What does venture capital mean? And here the right answer is B, a long term startup capital provided to new entrepreneurs. Here I put it B, but it is not B, basically it is the second point, this second point, right. From this whole topic we organize a question for the sake of MCQ for CSE prelims 2020, and the question is all about consider the following statements. The FATF we discussed in detail, Financial Action Task Force is an intergovernmental body that works to set standards and promote effective implementation of legal, regulatory and operational measures for combating money laundering, terrorist financing and other related threats to the integrity of the international financial system. Second point is India is a voting member of the Financial Action Task Force. Which of the statement given above are correct? And the right answer is C. It means both the statements we put are true in this context. Thank you very much.